Hello friends, welcome back to Spiritism for All, and today we continue to study the book Behind the Scenes of Obsession, the chapter Disobsession and Responsibility. The author is Manoel Philomeno de Miranda, and the psychography medium is Divaldo Pereira Franco. The fights continued, continuous and intense. Supported, however, by divine mercy, we were equally committed to respond to the trust of superior spirituality. It's certain that the oak stiffens fibers under the assaults of the storm. We too were fortified in faith and enthusiasm as the invitations to the arduous battle of fidelity to spontaneously assumed duty multiplied. Here was the eruption of passions long subordinated to the will trying to unbalance. There were the onslaughts of violence through irresponsible people who made themselves docile instruments of the unhappy spirits, careless and disturbed relatives stirring up rebellion, souls fond of the close bonds of matrimony, inconsequential, giving rise to redoubled affliction, wounded by the splinters of jealousy, anger, and folly, transforming themselves into brutal executioners. Resisting as much as we could, inspired and helped as we were, we felt at the same time the rare happiness of finding ourselves in the fields of redemptive faith. We evoked the martyrs of early Christianity and exulted. If now the arena had disappeared from the places where it was built, it had standard limits, however, starting from the inner world of each one to the distant parts of thought. Yesterday, the Holocaust and public martyrdom were a stimulus to continuation, and the blood spilled turned into fertilizer at the roots of the nascent faith. Not now. The testimonies should be silent on the cross of abnegation and renunciation, away from the big spectacles. Days passed without other changes when, in the usual work of mediumistic exchange, Saturnian explained that his brother Glaucus would come to the incorporation by the medium Morais for valuable instructions. Saluting us in the name of the Lord, the noble instructor immediately considered. As the dear friends are informed, our brother Theophrastus has been a dear guest of this house. From the interviews we had, sometimes in the amphitheater, sometimes in the lazaretto where Henriette Marie is, and right here, the ancient magician of Rouen has withdrawn into very deep meditations and a perfectly understandable repentance. Awakening to the truth is also being born to responsibility. Knowing the good means renouncing error. The blind man who lingers without the contagion of his sight for many years, on waking up in the morning of a beautiful day, feels the burning of the light and experiences the suffering that the light produces. He retraces his path through the stormy night and suffers, though drunk with light. Identifying with the abundant life may seem like an easy struggle. Persevering, however, in communion with the greater life represents a sacrificial and continued effort against the acclimatization in which one lived. In this sense, the Master had always been incisive and concise. Do not sin again, so that something worse may not happen to you, he enunciated to the newly cured. A natural break in the spiritual friend's explosion became spontaneous, and going on, he clarified, sorry, marked by the revolt that slowly consumed him in this long period of time since the arbitrary punishment by the fire, of which he was the victim. Our friend cherished the flame of revenge in his mind, relentlessly seeking those who were responsible for his suffering. As, however, hatred blinds and obliterates the sources of reason, he has not been able to identify exactly the one who plotted the infamous tragedy, only now finding him in a situation even worse than his own. He preserved, however, from Christianity the unfortunate conception that he was given by his tormentors, the ones who indulge in the shadow of faith to enjoy personal benefits, the ones who have honey in their lips and a terrible acidic heart, the shepherds who devour the sheep, and of the sheep who are, in the final analysis, wolves disguised as sheep. The sweetness of Jesus' love was presented to him amidst flames that licked his flesh, and in smoke that choked him to death. Faced with the adulteration of the Master's teachings, as they came to him in the days of medieval ignorance, he maintains to this day, aversion to the name of Christ and to the doctrine he bequeathed to us. Careless, he became self-conscious and tormented by the absence of a light in the candle of peace. Without fuel of hope, he became all suspicion, arrogance, restlessness, despite the awareness of evil undertaken for a long time, and the fear that he was already exhausting the strength to proceed. Caught in the meshes of reproachable acts, he believes himself again to be a victim of circumstances, ignoring that our actions elect us victims or tormentors of ourselves, and that, however cruel our actions, we do not escape our destiny of happiness more today or later. The moment of necessary and difficult redemption sounded for him, which is already beginning, however. An immense path awaits him. A long dive into the suffering flesh awaits him for the benefit of himself. After a few moments of expressive silence, he continued, while he is definitely ready for spiritual renewal, since it's not up to us to constrain him under any pretext or circumstance, in order to be moved to his proper place in our sphere, where he will have to prepare himself for the struggles of future sublimation. He observes the tasks that occur here, the actions of new Christians, the real conduct that derives from reasoned faith, the level of love inspired by the love of Christ. He accompanies the rescue operations aimed at the sufferers of both planes of life, who come here, and above all, with our affectionate assistance, he follows the leaders of the faith, servants of the evangelical seeding, and the working mediums to feel if the teachings administered in this house are applied in the daily conduct by those who administer them. Checks the way in which the Spiritists behave under the constraint of testimony and proof, of disturbance and pain, confirming by their acts their identification with Christ. We have given him knowledge of the fraternity ministry developed by our temple, in order to provide him with the knowledge of true Christianity, in the view of the ideas that he cultivated and nurtured around a religion that was a victim in the past. He was a victim in the past. Although aware of the objectives of Spiritism, used as he was to the restrictions he maintained regarding human dignity, aware of the weakness of the characters of creatures, he allowed himself to be dragged by his own concepts, going through the intricacies of suspicion and disregard for the noblest flowerings of faith under any name. Despite this, the weak flame of natural faith, the need to reconnect with the truth fulfilled its mission, leaving him not infrequent fulfilled his mission, leaving him not infrequently fearful and anxious about the future. Fearful and anxious about the future. Living in the immortal sphere from whose realities he could neither doubt nor escape, following daily processes of reincarnation and discarnation, he feared being caught by the webs of the superior law, disarmed for the conscience of himself, entangled as he was in the web of his intimate misruled by hatred. Again, the spiritual field, desirous of summarizing a destiny in a brief narration, letting the commiseration of which he saw himself possessed, relating the indescribable spirit, added. Theophrastus, our brother, in need of our help that comes to us from above, is also a living lesson for everyone. None of us is exempt for being victims of such circumstances, slipping into the abysses of despair and hallucination, through whose downfall we can delay our progress or fortune too much. It's fair that we see in him our past, or what could be our present, if we hadn't as appeased as we were received and accepted the invitation of Jesus, our friend and master. In this way, ours and particularly yours responsibility is very great, in view of the conduct that we must live, so that our message speaks to the tormented spirit with the excellent language of the love of Christ applied to our actions. Witness of our evangelical experience, he will incorporate the lessons heard and seen in his intimate patrimony, depending on whether we offer them, acquiring strength or not, to donate to the one who lifts and supports us, being able, through love, to lift and support him too. As the Apostle to the Gentiles warns us through the Epistle to the Hebrews in chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. Therefore, we also, seeing that we have around us so great number of witnesses, putting aside all impediment and the sin that clings to us, let us run with perseverance the course that is proposed to us, looking at Jesus, author and finisher of the faith, who for the joy that was proposed to him endured the cross, despising the ignominy. Undoubtedly, we have witnesses around us, and there are many in greater number than is thought. These who are men and those who, from the spiritual world, accompany what we think, say, and do. and on reflection with greater emphasis he added, "In every problem of disobsession, it's necessary to consider the suffering spirit that causes suffering, and take into account the ethical resources of the counseling medium, along with his spiritist conduct, that is, his moral responsibility." Conduct and responsibility, those that are essential in the task of spiritist counseling, since instruction that's not accompanied by example does not have the tone of truth. Undoubtedly, the merit of the obsessed himself, the possibilities that can be offered with the return to health, in the sense of freeing himself from obsession, are also favorable points for untying the sick person from the shackles with the past crime, in charge of which the discarnate becomes an unhappy intermediary. However, in the current achievements of the Spiritist temples that are transformed into hospital schools on earth for incarnates and discarnates, the dense population of those residing there or on our side of life follows the loyalty of the Spiritist teachings when they are incorporated or not into the modus vivendi, way of life, or modus operandi, way of behaving, of the psychophonic mediums, counseling mediums, and managers of the Spiritist centers. Beautiful sounding words, high concepts are easily acquired in many places. The excellence, however, of an idea, of a conviction, of a religion is evidenced by the number of those who were modified, who were transformed, and who gave themselves to its reality. In any process of disobsession, we cannot disregard the competition of time, which requires a high dose of patience and perseverance. Those who propose to help understand the need to create conditions for the desideratum. Thus, therefore, they consciously or unconsciously assume significant spiritual responsibility to those who are disturbed by each other in the unhappy commitments to which they cling. As soon as the first favorable results of health appear, the aid workers cannot and must not leave to the mercy of insecurity and psychic dystonia in return to balance those who were previously crushed by the dissolving forces of disturbance. Awakening to an understanding of new and wide-ranging duties, we are bound to help them with the affection of parents or teachers, giving them lengthy lessons of faith and continual instruction for the maintenance of the basic requirements of inner health, that a more damaging and more serious recurrence does not occur to them than the previous one. Some of the entities removed from their guests do not always clarify themselves immediately or conform to the new situation. They continue to accompany their former victims and wait for an opportunity to get the victims again. On the other hand, several discarnate persons responsible for simple obsessions continue to require loving assistance until their superior purposes are firmed and tuned in with the help of their mentors. Until their superior purposes are firmed and tuned in with the help of their mentors. Any task of disobsession, therefore, represents a noble and high responsibility for all who are involved in it, requiring secure doctrinal knowledge and evangelical crystalline living. We understood and confirmed that, without a doubt, Spiritism is an immortal lesson and that our responsibilities are truly very great. Far, however, we found ourselves to realize the transcendental implications of the Spiritist teaching in the day-to-day of our journey ahead of the discarnate brothers. We followed, therefore, the mentor's elucidations with lively interest and, why not say, with some astonishment. Quite logical, the concepts penetrated us deep into our souls. After a brief interval, Brother Glaucus continued. By participating in charitable exchange meetings with discarnate sufferers, our friend learns to access the value of love in all kinds of operations. He perceives the powerful non-violence of love, the result of the magnetic fluids manipulated by the feelings of those who guide them, and, above all, the sublime magic of the presence of the consummate Christ through the bonds of exchange through prayer. He has seen in the services between the two spheres of life the result of excellence of the fraternity and the efficiency of the methods of Christian charity. With a keen sense of observation and deep mental acuity, he understands that we use the same techniques, some of which are familiar to him, using the same expressions of energy, applied, however, with broad and different purposes from his own, supplying us with inexhaustible sources of divine love. Faced with these new discoveries made by his spirit, now eager for inner peace, his mental panorama changes and his vision of reality changes. He is already experiencing the thirst for liberation, although he can recognize the need for the heavy toll of compensation that his actions now impose on him, with the urgency he needs to get out of the labyrinth of passions in which he has been, in whose places he aspired the miasmas of hatred, of hallucination, and of unspeakable despair. The conscience of the truth offers us a lucid conscience. The error no longer tarnishes our reasoning, and the spirit no longer conforms the lures or accepts illusions. The ransom tax is imposed upon himself as an imposition of his own success. He feels that he does not deserve dishonest and statutory happiness based on cunning, which would represent an impediment to peace. Reflecting more about the subject and externalizing through the medium's face the nobility of the lines of his face and the harmony and sublimation of his spirit, the wise instructor concluded. When we open a small hole in an obstacle that blocks our vision, the wide field of events unfolds exuberantly beyond the impediment. By penetrating it with careful observation, we discover an almost endless horizon. That's how our actions are. They produce holes in the walls of difficulties. A negative action directed against someone may not do him harm immediately. The one who was our victim, however, can take the firecracker and throw it further on, hurting, unbalanced, as many as are within his reach. He was already sick, yes, waiting for someone to give him the impulse to practice unexpected excesses. Alas for us, however, it's similar to the scandal lesson. Who to him who practices it. However necessary, we are not to become its instrument, as Jesus asserted. This is also how the noble gesture, the high thought, the divine word work. Helping someone who is at the mercy of ignorance, or under the constriction of despair, or at the gates of madness, how much he may produce in the future in peace and joy, full of hope and courage, he certainly owes it to the Lord of life, and also to the one who offered him the needed help. The impulse of our bestowal will be traveling through this one and that one. Any kind of aggression anticipates the savage vibration of hatred, anger, and the perversion that involves what falls into his mesh, predisposing him to a compatible reaction to the attack he may experience. The plan of relief and charity also externalizes the involving energy that permeates the being to the one who aims, and when the act reaches him, he will be already invested with a favorable reserve to the registration and acceptance of the offer of love. Changing his tone, the spiritual friend reported to the Suarez family, elucidating that the processes of disobsession of the various members of the family would still require from us, for some time, a large amount of work in order to donate more efficient assistance. In the face of someone's distress, he made himself explicit. We usually interrogate the surge of clarification. The sufferings of people who are ennobled by work and who take flight to the regions of love seem unfair to us. The tolls of pain to which many are called when they are in the renewal in the sphere of edifying works appears to us as undue or severely strong. Spirits in sanctification appear to us loaded with continuous trials, and they seem to us to be too much. All the spirits, however, asked for the opportunity of a rescue in the past, when they believed themselves capable. Not always, however, when they requested it, they had the necessary resistance to produce them, coming to afflictions only now, when they love and serve, produce and help, they have the vast patrimony of love and resignation, knowledge and hope to lighten their burden. The test arrives when the student has taken the course, obviously as a natural consequence for the verification of learning in the selection of the fittest and most valuable. In those cases, however, illness and pain are preventive measures that prevent further damage to the economy of progress. Love itself, after examining the resources and possibilities of certain patients of the soul, deepening the time-consuming observation in them, and proving to them the literal use of the lessons of reincarnation with the aggravations of the evil plans that they nurture, makes it impossible for them to fall into more serious damage, harsher commitments for themselves, resolving that, for the time being, for the improvement of their acquisitions, only the disease, the worsening of their condition, providing in his way, while bedridden, time to meditate and transform ideas, to seek the divine thought and renew themselves. Faced therefore with sufferers of this or that nature, let us not rush into adventurous revelations as to its causes, lest we run the risk of making mistakes. In any situation, let us value the blessing of the rescue, the living lesson for valuable learning, and let us submit ourselves calmly to the impositions of the law. There are patients, such rebels, that the best medicine for their health is the continuation of the suffering in which they find themselves. It's very important. There are patients, such rebels, that the best medicine for their health is the continuation of the suffering in which they find themselves. That's why the cure is not possible for everyone, the physical cure, I mean. informed and enlightened, sure that everything obeys to the superior planning, let us be the brother of charity, of love, of compassion, and involve the sufferers who seek us in the fabric of our prayer and our good feelings, helping and passing. The law will reach us all. The law will reach us all. Let us prepare ourselves for the good, for the moment of our examination, in the blessed school of progress. Saying goodbye, the lovely benefactor led us in a sphere of peace and precious reasoning, which would enable us to understand with certainty and in depth future events, as well as to reason with value around past events, reassuring us with the revelations about divine justice and sublime love. Very good chapter. In the next one, we will see the continuation of the drama, the unexpected solution. Thank you very much for watching us. If you like this video, please leave us your like, leave us your comment if you want, share this video with your friends, and please subscribe to the channel, so helping us to grow. Thank you very much.